90.7 KPFK, Los Angeles.
The following radio program has been approved for broadcast by the Federal Communications Commission and is in compliance with all community standards.
From Los Angeles,
Cary Harrison.
Russia, if you're listening.
Talk show, random, political, outrageous, philosophical, analytical, passionate, sunsets, roadkill cooking tips, open-minded, swordsman, bent, resolute, chocolate, bushwhacker, belt buckles, investigative, companion, fearless. Call in. Piercing the cloud of mainstream entertainment. It's the Cary Harrison Files.
And it is the Cary Harrison Files. Welcome. Glad to have you here. Sometime we'll do a whole show on community standards and what that means with the FCC, what it originally meant, contemporary community standards. And that meant that you had to say words or not say words that were the words in your community. But in this community of Los Angeles, all the words are used all the time. So theoretically, it should just be a string of epithets. However, we still have to pretend, don't we? And that's kind of the key here. And these are those times. So that's why I run that disclaimer, because it's a big, wet kiss on the large curd cottage cheese fanny of the folks that are hyper scrutinizing us right now. All that to say, we're going to take a look at something that's a real hot button issue, and I think a metaphor for the larger times in which we live. You wake up in a country that can measure everything, don't you? It measures your steps, your sleep, your sodium intake, but it can't seem to measure the value of a human life without a coupon code. Here, life is a line item. It's priced by zoning boards, discounted by insurers, surge priced by hospitals, and repossessed by bureaucracy with all the warmth of a parking ticket. And we're told, meanwhile, that life is sacred. Then we're handed a menu where the sacred comes a la carte. Air optional, dignity extra, hope sold separately, batteries not included. You see, the creed is simple. If you're profitable, you're precious. If you're expensive, you're expendable. We confected a neat little miracle where a newborn's first breath costs more than a used car and a dying person's last breath is vetted by a spreadsheet. We've got a government that assures you that it cannot manage a clinic, but by God, it can engineer your exit with a laboratory's poise. We love life, it swears. And we're going to prove it by rationing food at school and rationing air in the office, rationing mercy at a trial. We're going to ration lives on death row. Our politics now treat life like an inconvenient rumor. Everyone cites it. Nobody budgets for it. And it's the same chorus that hymns sanctity and shrugs when the lights go out at a shelter, but the water tastes like coins, when the ambulance arrives with a payment plan. And you're instructed to clap on cue. Clap for the charity that keeps the poor alive long enough to thank their benefactors. Clap for the fundraising telethon that turns agony into a variety hour. Clap for the brand new Awareness Month, because awareness is cheaper than action and looks great on a sash. We've replaced the golden rule with the quarterly report. Kindness now arrives through a checkout page. Would you like to round up your humanity today? By the way, when you're at the store, whatever it is, a CVS, I don't care, and they want you to round up the cost of everything you just bought and make a donation, that's a profit center for that company. They're not acting as a third part. We feel good and we just want to give you another avenue to donate. No. They already made a giant donation in advance and they're paying that off. So not only do they get the giant tax deduction for making a donation to a charity, but when you pay it back, they've already paid it back. It's pure profit. So it's just another profit center. These are the things that we deal with that are not in front of us and are not explained. and it's all BS. Meanwhile, our techno prophets, right? And they're swearing that immortality is near for those who can afford the beta. The rest of you are going to be upgraded to content. And I realize over a certain age, this is not going to make a lot of sense, but people that are streaming in their 20s, they're going to get it. But for all of us, our grief is going to monetize well. Our patience will make a fine data set. Our likeness will be licensed to cheer for products that we can't afford. This is the magic of AI now. We've turned the word community into a toll road and staffed the booth with an algorithm that waves to the rich and searches the poor. Actually, it waves the rich through, doesn't it, while searching the poor. There's now a mural about hope where the clinic used to be. There's a hashtag to prove that we care. And it trends until dinner and vanishes by dessert. Ritual replaces repair. And you're meant to smile in the photo because nothing terrifies power like a face that refuses to be decorative. The joke, it's cruel, it's practical, it's efficient, is that life in today's United States isn't priceless. It's perfectly priced. The meters are calibrated, the turnstiles greased, the premiums auto-debited, and if you slip, we're going to light a candle and call it culture. If you shout, we're going to call it bad manners. If you demand to be treated as human, we're going to run a pilot program to study the feasibility of humanity at scale. So here's your wake-up call. The only people who truly value your life are the ones willing to make it unprofitable to wreck it. You can keep clapping for the parade of awareness, or you can step in front of it and embarrass the Grand Marshal. So I've now teed you up for the main course next. We're going to look at justice, or whatever the state swears is justice when it's feeling theatrical. Today, we're going to peer through a pane of glass into the Republic's favorite funhouse, the death penalty, our civic ritual where the government insists it can't possibly deliver health care correctly, but by God, it can kill you with laboratory precision, or not. Sometimes it fumbles the chemistry set, oops, and then calls it closure. The numbers this year are so grim and busy, already north of 35 executions, on pace for the most since 2012, a kind of renaissance for state-sanctioned finality. If your idea of renaissance includes needles and gas and firing squads. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the Europeans made abolition a condition for polite society. If you want in the EU club, you check your gallows at the door. You check your guillotines in the green room. So our exhibit today is a window, literally the window on death row. It's an Oscar-qualified indie that refuses the Netflix true crime diet of gawking, of gasps, tidy moral algebra. This film doesn't ask you to rubberneck. It asks you to reckon. Uh-oh. And it follows Joaquin Jose Martinez, the first Spaniard exonerated from U.S. death row. That means freed. He's a man the machine nearly turned into paperwork. And this film is about second chances, which is another way of saying it's about whether we as a country that worships redemption stories actually believe in redemption. And that's, of course, when it counts. I know the talented director, Linda Freund, years ago on Air America. Some of you will remember me on KTLK, AM 1150 here in Los Angeles. She was our Pitbull producer and the co-pilot that I needed at the time to pull off, well, I need it actually every time. I need it right now to pull off such a complex show every single day. Every segment came back with bite marks and better tape. It was a miracle of old school radio back when it was truly fun. She lives in Spain now. She was on staff at the Wall Street Journal, and now she's engineered a documentary with compassion instead of voyeurism. And she didn't end on the happy talk coda, the one that lets you pat yourself on the back for being aware. She went the other way. And yes, here in the land of the free, more than 30 people have already been executed this year, the highest clip in a decade. And while public support keeps softening, this train is still accelerating even as the passengers lose enthusiasm for the destination. This is the definition of politics, isn't it? So you can sample this, the thunder of her documentary yourself. The full film just screened at La Femme, and it's online for only a few days, right here, right now on the Cary Harrison Files. And the first 10 of you can see it for free with a promo code KPFK 2025, KPFK 2025. Simply go to tinyurl, that's TINYURL, tinyurl.com /window death row. tinyurl.com /window death row. Best thing to do is just simply watch us right now on YouTube. You can simply go to Cary Harrison YouTube, just Google it, it'll come up, or Cary Harrison Substack, and you'll be able to see in graphics the URL for this so that you can catch it. It's an indie with Oscar bona fides. It's built on the radical idea that human beings are not content. And you've been told that by you-know-who used to hold a make-believe chainsaw and carve up the government. You are content. This documentary looks for humanity in the bleakest of places, and then it keeps looking even after it gets uncomfortable. Now, to help you test your conscience and maybe dent it, we've got two heavy hitters. Linda Freund, the director who refused the true crime template, could have gone for it, but didn't, and made something braver. And Mike Farrell, the same Captain B.J. Honeycutt from MASH, who spent decades turning California's appetite for the needle into a political question mark, and now helms death penalty focus. And he once framed the only question that matters. It isn't whether they deserve to live. It's whether we deserve to kill. We're going to start with director Linda Freund. I want to welcome you to the Cary Harrison Files.
It's great to be here. And just some background for your listeners. Back when you and I were in the progressive radio trenches together, that was during the era of Rumsfeld, George W., Karl Rove, we lived by this mantra, it's fun to be progressive. There's a joy in compassionate politics. And I think right now we don't necessarily have the luxury of that. So it's nice to think back to that time and then think forward to the future and wonder, when can we start integrating that compassion, that humanity, so it isn't just a period of defense and destruction? So just reconnecting with you now reminds me of that and really the power in that. It's great to be back in touch.
Well, yes. And we used to laugh and laugh while Swinging Dick Cheney was running his fax machine. And I remember instructing everyone to please open your microwave ovens and point them toward Washington, D.C. You can't do that anymore, but it was good, clean fun. And here we are again. Let's actually look at this. You mentioned a time when. There is a time now in Europe, and they're watching with EU eyes, where abolition is table stakes. What do you think that Europeans would notice first about our ritual of killing?
So I'm consistently approached by Europeans who've seen the documentary and are boggled by the death penalty in the US. I have to explain how politicized it is, how there are different questions that are linked up when it comes to death penalty being associated with tough on crime. And there is a gap, definitely in Europe, to the point where there is only one country in Europe, not the EU, but Europe, where the death penalty is actively practiced. Do you know which one that is? Can you fancy a guess?
Oh, there's nothing fancy about the guess or the answer.
Well, it's Belarus, actually. So it's more Eastern Europe. Right.
Who doesn't want to be there all the time?
But otherwise, heavily banned. But I think what Europeans understand beyond the ethical aspect is also some of the financial aspect. We are in the age of austerity right now in the United States, allegedly. And the film features this incredible lawyer, Richard Dieter. He used to be the executive director of the Death Penalty Information Center. And he explained that it's much cheaper, actually, much lower cost to keep someone in prison for life than on death row, where that can tally on average $1 million each person when you factor in appeals. Right. So there are a number of ethical considerations, but also financial considerations to think about.
Right. And since everything we're told is really about money, it's just about the cost. I wonder what a Last Supper costs on death row. I mean, maybe you order lobster and an apple, but it's going to be hospital rates. So it's probably the most expensive meal ever cooked since the dawn of humankind.
Right. And the irony of that. So the film opens with this question or conversation about the absurdity of the last meal. You're going to be dead tomorrow. You're going to see the last minute of your life on the clock. And they're telling you, choose a meal, as if that were to be an act of grace. And so what you see in the film, which I find fascinating about Joaquin Jose Martinez and his character, is that he goes through the trauma of being on death row, wrongly convicted, and he takes that concept of the last meal and he reverses it. When he finds out that he's exonerated, he gives away all of his stuff and he orders on Canteen sandwiches for all the death row inmates in his pod and reclaims that and says it's as if we were enjoying our last meal together. But instead of it being this goodbye and this kind of sorrowful act of ethical, grandiose companionship in the bleakest of moments, it becomes an act of celebration and liberation.
Yeah, I would think, having only hours to live, you're really not focused on a pedicure and what is the broccoli? Is it going to be oversteamed? It's just such a burlesque. It's pure theatrics, and it makes Mildred feel like it's kind of lovely. It's like Jesus. He gets his last supper. So he was well fed when he was nailed up on the cross. This is a good pivot point to bring in, and you brought us Mike Farrell, who we've met many times back in our Gandhi Peace Parade March back in 2008, as a matter of fact, and several times subsequent to that. Mike Farrell, who we all know from MASH, and who Renee Uwarski, our director, of course, is on bended knee, a giant fan like all the rest of us. We're super glad to have you here on the Cary Harrison Files. You say the real test is, do we deserve to kill? When you put that to legislators in private, what answer do they give you when the cameras are off?
When the cameras are off, depends on who they are. Legislators have a tendency to not be honest people, but they say we can't help it, we can't move. Not all of them. I'm sorry. We happily we have some very courageous leading legislators both in this state and around the country. Governor Newsom at the head of the list. Governor Newsom declared a moratorium on the death penalty, said it would not exist in California, and in fact did away with death row and destroyed the equipment, the killing equipment. So there are, those folks out there, but the run-of-the-mill legislator is just running scared of what they believe is. We have a visitor.
Or ambulances and sirens. We must be in
Sorry
LA.
about that.
Are we in?
No, that was my brain. By thinking out loud. I'm kidding.
I thought we were being arrested for talking about this.
Well, and that becomes an issue too. We're looking at sort of the theatrics of it all. I think it's scary to stand up for something that we know actually doesn't work, because for whatever reason, there's also a giant industry attached to it. If I'm not mistaken, whatever the wonderful cocktail of toxins that they feed into people all have to be made at special compounding pharmacies. I mean, that alone is an industry that you'd want to be able to invest in if you were really a cynical person. Like, there's money on every side.
Yeah, absolutely. And understand that the compounding pharmacy process is a result of the fact that many states have declared that it's inappropriate to spend money on this process and on the poisons that are necessary to kill people. So they've had to reduce themselves to go into the compounding pharmacies. And I just read that, I believe it's the state of Texas, just spent $750,000 for a special shipment of this murderous ointment to do away with the people, because Texas, of course, leads the list of the killing states in this country. But Governor DeSantis now, the little man in Florida, is trying to demonstrate that he's presidential caliber by killing people that he has no idea who they are, what they've done, whether they are guilty or innocent, as a matter of fact. So we've got a real issue with leaders, the lack of leadership, and unfortunately, the leadership today in this country is coming from the White House, and it is bloodthirsty and mean-spirited and going to the effect of as your listeners probably know, to the effect of taking the 37 men that have been commuted from death row, the federal death row, by President Biden, and insisting that, though he can't reverse that commutation, they should live in horror. They should live in the worst circumstances possible. And he's making his Department of so-called Justice make sure that that happens. And it's talking about a kind of disgraceful behavior on the part of so-called leadership in this country that just, forgive me, pukes on the whole notion of human value, of the possibility of what we've seen in this film, the possibility of someone rising out of the depths of despair to become not only a thoughtful but a caring and it seems to me quite gentle and humane human being, which is one of the beauties of this film, I must say, because we usually get with these films made about stories about people on death row, people who were, for one reason or another, reduced to killing, or in more instances than not, accused of being the murderer in an issue like this, and imprisoned and incarcerated for life until we decided to do away with them.
Everybody wants cheap airfare, but where do you find it? You call low-cost airlines. They specialize in cheap flights, discount hotel rooms, cheap car rental rates, and with a best price guarantee. If you want the lowest prices on your airline tickets or other travel services, call now. That's right, call. That's the only way to get these rates. Experts are standing by 24/7 to get you the cheapest airfare and hotel rates available. So don't wait. Call now.
And I think this whole subject is now a giant metaphor for the times in which we live, because everyone is potentially can potentially end up there now. This is not us looking at them. I'm just going to reintroduce you guys because, as Dorothy said in The Wizard of Oz, my people come and go so quickly here when they're in their cars. Cary Harrison with you. This is the Cary Harrison Files. We're live streaming right now. You can Google Cary Harrison YouTube or Cary spelled like Cary Grant, Cary, Cary Harrison Substack. You'll be able to see live video of both Linda Freund and MASH's BJ Honeycutt, better known as Mike Farrell, who's been on this show and on this station at least 112 times. Why? Because his voice is important. And we're talking about the future as we see it, which has become the present, which has also become the new architecture of that. How okay is it? Even though the public isn't into it, it keeps advancing, that being exterminating live humans here on U.S. soil. We're looking at the value of life and death penalties theater of humane killing. Linda Freund, director of the Oscar-qualified The Window on Death Row, refuses the true crime formula instead. And with her is MASH's Mike Farrell, president of Death Penalty Focus, which reframes the debate. It's not whether they deserve to live, it's whether we deserve to kill. You can watch the documentary while it's online simply by going to tinyurl.com/window death row. I know that's a lot to remember, especially with ears half full of wax, like mine often. You can watch the live video stream, and we'll just put up the graphic for that. The promo code is KPFK 2025. Question for both of you. This year's execution pace is spiking, even as national support declines. What breaks first, the machinery of death or the public's tolerance for running it?
So first I want to point out, I think it's interesting that we're talking about the political influence and how we're in this kind of age of despair. But I also want to say, even though the general public support of the death penalty has waned, we still have a sense of a cultural support or a bit of a perversion. And I'm going to just say something a bit controversial here that really informed why I took the documentary approach I did.
All right, hold on. I'm just going to sit back 3 inches, holding on to the arms of my chair.
Get ready. I may blow fire through the screen. No, but we're in this golden era of true crime podcasts and documentaries. People love it. It's a formula. It works, right? I indulge. I'm sure you both indulge. But I think we need more. We need a break from that idea of human life being, as you said in your monologue, Cary, in the beginning, upgraded to content, right? So because what this formula is doing is making it acceptable to turn, number one, viewers, the public, into this judge and jury, and the exoneree or a prisoner into an it. So when we're approaching the true crime formula, automatically they're its and they're guilty until proven innocent. And we talk about this notion of if even one person innocent could be killed on death row, and there's been more than 1,600 people executed. So arguably one of them has been innocent, right? Should we execute anyone at all? And the argument often being made in circles that are more pro-capital punishment is, well, they've probably done other stuff. And again, that falls in line with this notion of guilty of something before being proven innocent. And so with this formula, what I wanted to do, which is the anti-true crime formula, is give just enough information to establish that Joaquin was dealt a level of injustice like no other, but instead focus the thrust of the piece on how you sustain hope. What does faith look like? What do those human connections on death row look like? And what do you do with that second chance at life? How do you forgive? So the question you asked about what breaks first, I think there needs to be some cultural seeding. I think that we need to have these conversations, right, about where we are and what is our kind of emotional aptitude for this. How are we even approaching this conversation? And one thing I really appreciate about Mr. Farrell, and I'm so glad that you're a supporter of the documentary, is that over the decades of your work in death penalty advocacy, you have engaged in debates with people who are for the death penalty for various reasons, whether they be district attorneys, whether they be members of the victims' families, and you reach them on a common ground. You speak in a respectful way. You're conversing about what does this mean to take a life, and where are the politics? Is there closure? Is there forgiveness? And that is really the thrust of what I was trying to do with this documentary, to essentially get the people to break first, and really push for change.
2 quick thoughts, and then we have to pause, I hate to say. One is, Mike, I'm going to write on a Post-it note, puke on the notion. That is the greatest little phrase. I'm going to steal it, but give you attribution. 2, when I was in college in Florida, I still remember the name, Sandra Mortham was the Secretary of State, and I had done a story on how she took her 7-year-old son to Old Sparky, that's the nickname for the electric chair, and took him to watch because, I don't know, it makes him a man or something or other. But it was really horrifying because she said that everyone should take their children to go watch these things. And here we are today with Governor DeSantis, and it is so normal, not even shocking anymore. So we're going to explore a little bit about why we think, what we can do to change that, how this documentary is waking everyone up as we continue here on the Cary Harrison Files.
Listen, well, it's still legal. The Cary Harrison Files. CaryHarrison.com.
If you're living with diabetes and using insulin, you know the pain of pricking your fingers over and over again. Ouch! Well, by wearing a small remote device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, call now and get free shipping of your new CGM, plus we'll bill your insurance for you.
877-282-8102. That's 877-282-8102. 877-282-8102. 877-282-8102.
This pussy grabs back. The Cary Harrison Files. CaryHarrison.com.
I'm always going to be 10. I just admit it. I own it. I accept it. It's going to be okay. Cary Harrison with you. This is the Cary Harrison Files. We're looking at the value of life and death, the life and death penalty, really, and the theater of humane killing. We've got Linda Freund, director of the Oscar-qualified The Window on Death Row, and she has refused the true crime formula. It's out there. It's ubiquitous. She could be doing podcasts, Netflix, all the rest of it. But instead, well, she's sutured at the hip here today, right here, right now with MASH's Mike Farrell. We all know him as president of Death Penalty Focus and also a great actor. And he's reframed the debate. It's not whether they deserve to live, it's whether we deserve to kill. And here we are in an era where, what do we think about that? Let's jump right back into it. And let's ask Mike Farrell, for those, Mike, who still argue capital punishment is for the worst of the worst, what's your most effective way to make innocence risk, not vengeance, the center of the debate?
This is a struggle I've been going through for the last 40 years, Cary. It's trying to figure out what exactly is the point that will raise the curtain so that these people can understand that what they're doing is harming us all. And you can talk about the racism inherent in the system. You can talk about the cost of it, that people are stupefied to learn that it costs so much more to kill than it does to keep someone in prison for the rest of their natural life, if necessary. And you can talk about all of the issues associated with it. But what I'm finally coming to the understanding of is something that was articulated by one of the founders of this country. His name was Rush, Benjamin Rush. He was a doctor. He founded the Pennsylvania Prison Project. He opposed the death penalty because he said it brutalizes everyone associated with it. Not only the person who is murdered, it brutalizes those who do the murdering. It brutalizes those who give support to the system, the judges and the juries and the people out there in our society who don't understand that silence gives consent. So they are, in fact, taking part in the murder of a human being. And we suffer as a result of that. We, as citizens of the United States of America, because we don't understand that we are allowing ourselves to be harmed by those politicians who believe that if they can frighten you enough and scare you and your family, that you will go along with anything they say, whether it's bombing potential innocent people off the coast of Venezuela or people in our prisons, whether they are going to, I was just reading, we honored Robert Badinter, the French foreign minister who was responsible for doing away the death penalty in France. And he used the guillotine as an example. He said, before the guillotine was used, how did the society kill? They killed by crushing people under the wheels of wagons. They killed by any means that they could come up with. And then they came up with this thing of the guillotine that they thought was clean and simple.
Invented by a doctor. What's not to love?
Exactly. So I just try to keep bringing people to an awareness of the fact that you can demean yourself, dehumanize the people you're trying to kill. You are killing innocent people. You are killing people who are, we know, as Linda mentioned earlier, there are a great number of innocent people who have been executed in this country. We know the names of many of them. And something like 800 men and women who have been tried, convicted, and sentenced to death have now been released because they've been shown to be innocent people. But the system that some people use for personal advancement, some people use to, exercise their demons, insist on continuing this process. But it is doing extraordinary harm to all of us. And it's hard to get people to understand that. But Linda's film does an extraordinary job, I think, in touching on the system, on letting us know what happened, that this man was charged with this and there was a trial he was convicted and sentenced to death and spent God knows how many years. We know how many years. Under the worst of circumstances, being a non-person, having been designated as a nobody because he doesn't count anymore, and then having his conviction overturned and be released, and what he did with his life, the extraordinary way in which he grabbed onto life and remembered the people that she told the story about what he did for the people, the other inmates on death row, but went on and had a life that was glorious and humane and positive. And this is what we're capable of as human beings. But we get lost in this concept of doing away with the person who does bad things. And somehow that's going to make us feel better.
Yeah, and if the worst thing you can ever do is kill someone, then why would we do the worst thing you can ever do? Because it's the worst thing you can ever do.
Right.
But then you'd have to have critical thinking, and I don't believe we're invited into that particular small sandbox of possibility. Let me jump to... Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, Mr. Farrell, you made this interesting point about how...
It's Mike.
Okay,
Mr.
Mike.
Farrell is my father.
According to your book, I should just call you Mike, but when the respect comes, it's hard to pivot. Okay, Mike. You pointed out all of these people who are crushed under the weight, the ethical and emotional weight of the death penalty. And one group, I don't know if you had mentioned, were the victims' families. And I feel in the documentary that is very much expressed. We speak to Chaplain Earl Smith. He was the former death row chaplain in San Quentin. And he talks about these stories of the family members who he spoke to after executions and how there really wasn't this feeling of closure. In fact, one woman grabbed him after having seen the reality of taking a life. And she grabbed him and she said, did you tell the guy I forgave him? Did you tell him I forgave him? And the chaplain was like, no, you told me not to. And so this woman did not get closure. There was, in fact, an extra burden that she was carrying. Another person during an execution turned to the chaplain after and said, is that it? Right. So we're finding that we're also not experiencing this necessarily within that moment. There isn't this catharsis that people are expecting. In fact, what we're seeing politically, too, amid a number of botched executions, lethal injections, is this shift to nitrogen gas, this attempt to find cleaner and easier ways to execute someone so we don't have to confront the reality of what we're doing, whether it be the victims' families or the individuals who are part of the death machine.
Well said. It's the search for the humane execution is just nonsensical and terribly, terribly harmful. It's put us through this nonsense from hanging and firing squads to electrocution to gas, and now to this noxious smothering of people through the release of or the deprivation actually of oxygen, and then we find ourselves going backward. Now we're back to firing squads.
Yeah,
This is the politician, the worst of the politicians, the worst of the tribe that would have us continue this process. They are scrambling now to try to find something that they can use to prove to people that it is not only important and necessary that we do away with evildoers, but that we can do it painlessly and humanely. Well, that's nonsense. It's simply
putting lipstick on a pig, as they say.
If you can't believe it, when Joaquin, his first few days on death row, they were testing the electric chair. There had just been a botched execution in Florida. Someone had caught fire, and they gave all the inmates, and this is his first week there when he's still stomaching the wrongful conviction and questioning how he ended up there. They gave all of the inmates a questionnaire, and they were asked, how would you like to die? And then given a laundry list of methods. And so while this film goes into the humanity that can be found, I think it also highlights where our inhumanity or lack of humanity shines most.
I quite agree. The film is really a prayer, and it's one that we will profit from. Those who watch it will take the time; they will profit by it.
I'm just going to jump in, reintroduce you guys. We're talking right now to Linda Freund, director of the Oscar-qualified The Window on Death Row. She has refused the true crime formula, and MASH's Mike Farrell, president of Death Penalty Focus, reframing the debate. It's not whether they deserve to live, it's whether we deserve to kill. Mm-hmm. And as we explore this, there's such a political overlap in it. Pretty much all of it is political. I look at the Constitution, the founding daddies, my ancestors, and the whole notion for things like the First Amendment and others were a cure to a king that could just kill you because he felt like it. You said the wrong thing and your head magically fell off your spine and rolled down the gutter. Who knew why? And so many of our amendments are to not allow us to have a king or a body that can just remove American citizens from their opportunity for life. And this kind of circumvents that. There's no amendment for this. There kind of ought to be. I think of Robespierre and Mike Farrell. You were talking about the French, and they were using, if I'm not mistaken, the guillotine up until the 1970s.
Correct.
But not like a cheese grater that they were in the 1700s. But then they got rid of it. And here we are today. Let's bring old Sparky back from the 1920s. I think electricity had now been connected to enough houses. This was like a cool idea. What's next? Other than watching the documentary, coming into reality, and seeing it as a call to action. Do you guys have a special insight now that, Linda, you've made this documentary. Mike, you've now seen this documentary. Any new thinking that comes around?
Wow. So step by step, day by day, what I really hope for is to screen in one of the 27 states, among those states where the death penalty is legal and practiced, to screen in that environment where there are people of varying viewpoints, and to be able to engage in those smaller scale conversations and bring people on. Bring district attorneys into the crowd after having seen the documentary, bring exonerees, bring the victims' family members all together and get that conversation going. That's where I think this will start to impact change. And then also look at the precedent, look at these, I believe. So if you go on my website, windowdeathrow.com, you scroll down to the bottom, I created this animated map of the United States, and it shows where the death penalty is legal, where it's not, and where there's been a moratorium or a pause based on executive action. So really looking at those places where there is a pause, like California, and thinking about what those next steps are to be able to do away with the death penalty entirely, and then hope, of course, that you have a domino or ripple effect from there.
If you could show this, show one 5-minute scene from The Window on Death in every state house, what would it be, and which lawmaker might storm out first?
Wow. Yeah, I'd be actually curious. I'm so close to the film. I'd be very curious for Mike, not Mr. Farrell, for Mike's opinion on that. But I think it could be when Joaquin is describing his first day on death row, and how surprised he was, because he came in he was 24 years old essentially, and he believed in the death penalty up until that point where he was a victim of the injustice. And there he is, his first day on death row, and he's terrified and he's emotional, but he begins to hear the voices of other death row inmates who ask him, "Are you hungry? Do you need something to read?" And so what we see is this contradiction that a politician or somebody who has a varying viewpoint has to sit with. Wait, I can't just, in Joaquin's words, he used to see everyone on death row as monsters. Wait, I can't just see these people as monsters. There's something more here. These are human beings. And yes, there are a lot of people, there's a lot of mental illness on death row. There are a lot of people who show no remorse for their crimes. One of the death row chaplains explained to me that he often had human feces thrown at him through the bars. there are some psychological challenges, and there are people who, understandably, it would be better if they are behind bars in those situations or in prison for life. But that doesn't mean we stop seeing them as human, and that doesn't mean that death is and a killing operation is the viable approach.
We're going to take a little pause. We're going to play the clip first. This is a clip from the trailer of your film, just to add some real human touch to the wizardry that you've done, so that we can feel and hear the voice of Joaquin. And then as we return, we're going to finish up. I realize this interview has gone long, but we don't get to do these conversations ever. So I think it's important to give it all the breath we can. Let's hear a clip now from your trailer, and then we're going to pause.
Tomorrow, you're going to see the last minute of your life on the clock. You don't know if you're going to scream, and they're telling you, choose a meal.
You have to assume that of the 1,600 people who've been executed, we probably have executed innocent people.
How do we justify taking human life gratuitously?
And Madam Clerk, would you publish the verdict, please?
State of Florida versus Joaquin Jose Martinez. We, the jury, find as follows as to count 1 of the indictment. Defendant is not guilty.
When they tell me that I'm going home, I bought a sandwich for every single one of the guys on death row. It was like saying, this is our last meal together.
If you're living with diabetes and using insulin, you know the pain of pricking your fingers over and over again. Ouch! Well, by wearing a small remote device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, call now and get free shipping of your new CGM, plus we'll bill your insurance for you.
877-282-8102. That's 877-282-8102. 877-282-8102. 877-282-8102.
Listen, well, it's still legal. The Cary Harrison Files. CaryHarrison.com.
And it is the Cary Harrison Files. Cary Harrison with you. Don't forget, we're live streaming right now on YouTube and Substack and probably anything else with a chip and a signal. Simply Google Cary Harrison, Cary, and you'll be able to watch it. You'll be able to see Linda Freund, the director of this incredible documentary, along with Mike Farrell, a name that you know, along with a newsletter that I want you to sign up for at CaryHarrison.com. And there we can do stuff we cannot do on the new hyper-controlled, FCC-controlled broadcast radio. So we're pushing the envelope, believe it or not, having this discussion right here, right now, but there's other information that we can include in the newsletter. We're living in a country that can't pave a street without a ribbon cutting, but swears it can kill humanely with the grace of a Swiss watch. And today we're not rubbernecking the true crime carnival. We're asking why the government thinks redemption is a sermon for Sunday and a scheduling conflict on Monday. Linda Freund's The Window on Death Row puts a human being, Joaquin Jose Martinez, back where the machinery tried to file him, among the living. Mike Farrell says the only honest question is, do we deserve to kill, not do they deserve to live? We. So put your name on that pronoun and let us know where you stand. We're getting a lot of messages keying up on YouTube about No King's Day and all of this really overlapping and integrated through this conversation. We're talking to Linda Freund. We're talking to Mike Farrell. And let's take a quick look at dodging the Netflix grammar of guilt and glitter. You actually created a set for this man that avoided his PTSD. Many documentaries will take full advantage of the hell somebody's been through, re-torture them for the sake of delicious drama. That's the true crime technique. You actually, Linda Freund, avoided all of that to honor the very argument you're making. That could reduce the effectiveness of a documentary, but didn't.
I appreciate that. There are two things that I did within the documentary that serve as I would say this type of dog whistle for other documentarians. I just watched it on the big screen yesterday at La Femme Film Festival and was reminded of this. I opened with the slate and my first question to Joaquin, and it's, why are you doing this? Just to make sure it's okay for you. Because it was very important to me that he was entering this story on his own terms, speaking from the position of empowerment rather than victimhood. So often there are people pushed or forced into this storytelling before they're perhaps ready, especially a number of exonerees have severe PTSD. I learned through this process. So that was kind of the first thing. But the second thing is, okay, we're an indie doc. We were shooting in your run-of-the-mill studio apartment, my DOP Marco Castro, right? It was like a fourth floor walk-up. So Joaquin got to the top and he was out of breath. So maybe that wasn't the most comforting setup for him. But I made sure ahead of time to take out all of the exposed light bulbs. Just anywhere, any presence of them in that studio apartment. Because when Joaquin entered Death Row, 97, 98, as I had explained earlier, they were testing the electric chair. There had just been a botched execution where someone had caught fire. And through that process of testing, every time they would test, the light bulb near Joaquin's cell would flicker. And so it was as if he was looking at what was in store for him. And he simply can't look at an exposed light bulb anymore without having that visceral response. So I made sure all of those were concealed. Another thing I did is I invited his wife to join him. I wanted to make sure that he felt he could stop at any time and he had someone who truly understood him and he didn't have to explain himself to be able to kind of go to. And he did take advantage of that a number of times. And that's another, I don't know if dog whistle is quite the right word, but it certainly is provocative. That's another thing I'm sure to leave in the documentary is that he does ask for a break at one moment. And he talks to his wife about getting a panito, a towel, to wipe his face. And I left that in just to show that, again, human being, it's difficult. He explained to me every time he talks about this, he goes back to that moment. And you feel that emotional immediacy and intimacy when he's describing it in the documentary, his time there, he's back there.
Mike Farrell, California is what, the 5th, 6th, 7th largest economy? It just depends on what day, but let's just say it matters. Gavin Newsom, the governor of that state, matters, will likely run for president. Proposition 62 failed, yet this governor's moratorium on death penalty is holding. What did that campaign teach you about persuading a public still queasy and punitive?
There are many lessons that are learned from it. I was with Chesa Bodine just the other day. Chesa was elected district attorney of the San Francisco County, and was chased out of office because he would not pursue the death penalty. He said, "I will not take part in killing." Wow. And they recalled him. So there are very powerful forces in this state that are very strongly in support of the killing process because it frankly, it makes people money. It gives them power. But there are also very powerful people in this country who are opposed to it. And we elected one, thank God, Governor Newsom, and other legislators and people in the administration who are now maintaining that we can stop this and we will stop this. I believe I can't promise because he hasn't said that to me clearly, but I believe Governor Newsom is going to commute death row before he leaves office. And in doing so, he will strike a very courageous chord in politics in this country. It's been done, as we know, by President Biden, almost all of federal death row. But when Newsom does what I believe he will do, I think it's going to make a statement that people not be able to ignore and be terrifically moved by. I've been fortunate enough in this pursuit to come to know people like Gary Tyler, who spent 42 years in prison in Louisiana for a crime he didn't commit and came out and just become a highly regarded artist making stitching quilts that are quite extraordinary. I encourage people to look up Gary Tyler. There are so many people like Joaquin who are out and doing extraordinary work even after this society has insulted them to the degree that they were minimized and dehumanized and tried to kill them on some levels. You know, you lock somebody away on death row and they no longer exist in human terms. And the guards then who treat them, who deal with them, become dehumanized in the same process. That's that brutalization thing that Dr. Rush taught. We are maintaining a system that is doing great harm by practicing and preparing and supporting the idea of killing human beings. Makes no sense at all.
Thank you for, I was going to say something canned, like thank you for your service. I don't know what else to call it. 40 years of leading this baton when people are not even aware of what's going on around them, but it speaks to the larger condition in which we live and our mindset. And if our mindset, exactly as you say, starts to accept all of this and find it as the only answer to any issue or conflict is just to exterminate the roach, then, it gets worse and worse. Linda Freund, we're also up against the last, 30 seconds here. Why this topic for documentary when you could have done a documentary on documentaries?
Yeah, or on glitter. All of my friends are like, why always these traumatic subjects? Glitter is fascinating. I'm like, It's a moral responsibility for me. But all of this conversation, as we near the end of this, has me thinking about this reunion Joaquin had with his chaplain in the documentary 20 years later after his release. And the chaplain says to him, healing is taking place when you're using your trauma to try and relieve the suffering of others. So much of this changed, whether it be Gavin Newsom, one brave man, or whether it be these exonerees across the United States, or in Joaquin's case in Europe. All of that, all of those people banding together who use their trauma to relieve the suffering of others, to make an impact. That's what we should be focusing on. And that really is what I hope is the takeaway of the documentary.
Well, I'm very grateful you guys were both here. Quickly, Mike Farrell, how do we follow you on Death Penalty Focus?
Deathpenalty.org is our website. Anybody who wants to come to find out more about what we're doing is welcome to look us up, call us up, join. Let me just salute Linda for this work. This is, these kinds of things, delving into and exposing the reality of this system and doing it in a way, in this case, that is so life-affirming is a treat to watch. It is something that is incredibly important. I can't tell you how important it is.
Well, she embodies the definition of talent. And I got to eyewitness it for so long. And here we are with a powerful story that needs to be told and a powerful mindset that needs to be revealed and giving us hope when it's otherwise hopeless. And that's the forward step. That's the Gandhi moment here. So I really appreciate both of you coming on. I apologize we're out of time, but I hope we gave this thing enough room to breathe. Linda, where can people follow you quickly?
Sure. windowdeathrow.com is the website, and the Instagram handle is windowdeathrow.
All right. Thank you so much. Cary Harrison with you. We've been talking to Linda Freund, director of the Oscar-qualified The Window on Death Row, and she has refused the true crime formula, along with MASH's Mike Farrell, president of Death Penalty Focus, who reframed the debate. It's not whether they deserve to live, it's whether we deserve to kill. And we've been able to visit with an extraordinary documentary. When you catch this in archive, you'll be able to be one of the first 10 to be able to watch this thing for free. This is the Cary Harrison Files, and I look forward to seeing you next week. It's time.
Listen, well, it's still legal. The Cary Harrison Files. CaryHarrison.com.
Everybody wants cheap airfare, but where do you find it? You call Low Cost Airlines. They specialize in cheap flights, discount hotel rooms, cheap car rental rates, and with a best price guarantee. If you want the lowest prices on your airline tickets or other travel services, call now. That's right, call. That's the only way to get these rates. Experts are standing by 24/7 to get you the cheapest airfare and hotel rates available. So don't wait. Call now.
This is a special bulletin from the Timeshare Exit Hotline. If you're tired of your timeshare maintenance fees, listen to what happened to these timeshare owners who tried to reduce their $2,500 maintenance fees.
For more than 4 hours, we were yelled at. Not even allowed to use the bathroom until we had purchased a new timeshare for over $10,000, including closing costs of $2,800 put on a credit card, which I kept telling them we did not want.
There are legal ways you can exit a timeshare contract that you do not want. Learn how our experienced professionals can offer you a way to legally and permanently get rid of your timeshare. We can provide you with an affordable, one-time fixed fee and our 100% client satisfaction guarantee. So if you're ready to learn how to exit your timeshare contract, don't wait. Call the number on your screen right now.